Welcome to Lights in the Night with Russ Johnson. Join us in our never-ending quest for knowledge on extraterrestrial life, UFOs, and the beyond. Your host, Russ, will lead you on an intergalactic quest to discover alien existence and life expansion. Make sure to call in at 888-994-4995 Studio A to ask questions and get involved. And visit us online at lightsinthenight.org. Keep your eyes and ears peeled for Lights in the Night.
Hello, this is Russ Johnson, and once again, lightsinthenight.org. What is this all about? It's a podcast, and it's going all across many platforms on social media. And what we want to do is begin to talk about the soft launch done by the Pentagon a few weeks ago and 60 Minutes. And if we go back a little further, we can talk about the New York Times revelation, if you will, of December of 2017. So if you want to do a little bit of homework, you can tune into those platforms to see what we are talking about. But most people are talking about the Pentagon saying that now we have a possibility of having some tic-tac little things, UAPs as they call them, UFOs as we call them, in our airspace, if you will. So then if they are there, then somebody's flying them or operating those aircraft. So it could be some alien species on the planet. Well, I got a person this morning who will talk about all of that and say that the aliens have been here 400,000 years, maybe more. So let's see. Gillian Green has been around this industry for a lot of years, and she's a clairvoyant. She's from the UK. And she's been talking to people all across the world about alien activity, where the whole thing got started. If we go back to Zecharia Sitchin, and he has a book called The 12th Planet. Anyway, I'll let her talk about that. I'll just interview her and ask her questions. Gillian, thank you very much for being with us here on lightsinthenight.org. And so, once again, it's a big subject matter. Now, let me talk about some of your background. Could you give the audience some of the background that you've had in the last 60 years, 70 years, 80 years, in terms of looking at this whole issue?
Okay. Well, first, thank you for inviting me on your show, Russell. It's very nice to be here. And you're correct, my name is Gillian, and it's an ancient name. It's a name I've carried for a very, very long time. In this life cycle, I'm 86 years old. I've always been clairvoyant, and I was born into this life without any loss of memory. I have continuing consciousness for very, very long time, tens, hundreds of thousands of years. So the first time that I remember coming to this planet as a spectator, you might say, was about 400,000 years ago when the Anunnaki were living on the planet, and we came down into East Africa to look for a location to build our science laboratories with which to begin the process of actually developing modern Homo sapiens through genetic engineering. So yes, the extraterrestrials have been on this planet for a very, very long time. In fact, they were the same people who were here at the time of Atlantis. After Atlantis, they moved into the Middle East. This has gone on for thousands of years. And one of the first indicators that we had of it in what say more modern times was at the time of Leonardo da Vinci, when he painted UFOs in his paintings, including the Last Supper. His famous Last Supper painting has a UFO in the background, and so have other paintings that he did. So this disclosure that's going on now is very timely, it's very appropriate, and I'm of the opinion that the people on the planet are ready to receive this information. The government excuse for years has been keep it secret because the public will panic. Well, I don't think people are that silly. I don't think they will panic. I think most people will find it interesting and exciting, but it certainly disrupts the religious order of things on the planet to say that there are extraterrestrials, there are intelligent species in the universe, and many of them are living with us on the planet today.
Okay, great, great. When I look at going back, if you will, just for a minute or two, you were saying that you came here first, that you have incarnated many, many times in the last 400,000 years. But from what I read about Zachariah Sitchin's in the book, The 12th Planet, he was saying he goes back around 400,000 years ago when they first came here. Now, that's a long, long time. You came here at that time, if I may?
Yes, yes, yes,
Wow.
I did.
And you were
And they didn't come here 400,000 years ago. They came here a long, long time before that. They'd already been here for tens of thousands of years, and that was a return visit. Atlantis crashed everything, and it also caused a great disturbance in the system. So it was very more difficult to get back to the planet. But when they did get back, it's hundreds of thousands of years ago, maybe 1 million years ago. But the 400,000 year marker was when they had already established themselves on the planet and were wanting to begin the genetic engineering, because their own Igigi, their own astronauts, had been digging for the gold that they needed for their own environment on a different planet, and were tired of doing the work themselves. So they needed to create a usable labor force out of the humans that were already developing on this planet. At that time, Cro-Magnon and Neanderthal would have been on the planet. And they chose out of those people who they would take and develop into Homo sapiens sapien as we are today. So that genetic engineering began 400,000 years ago and was not completed until about 40,000 years ago. And then about 6,000 years ago, they had evolved, they completed Homo sapiens sapien, evolved, developed, educated, and trained them to the point where you have the Adam, the Adapa, the one whom they put in charge of humanity. And that's about 6,000 years ago.
Okay. So when they came to this planet, for those people who don't know, we just be brief on this one, they came to get the gold, and not because they needed as an exchange of goods and services, but because gold at that time would have fixed the atmosphere, which had some difficulty. Are we saying the same thing?
Yes, yes.
Oh, okay.
Gold is inert, it's non-magnetic, and it can be used in scientific processes. Yes.
Okay, great. So you came here then. When did you leave for the first time, if you can remember? You say you remember all the times that you have come and gone, and you have continuous memory. That's unique. That's very unusual. Yes. Why you?
Well,
why did they?
I don't know. Because I was originally Anunnaki. When I came with them, it was because I was one of them, and that trip 400,000 years ago was only for me a day trip down to the planet. I was living on a ship, and I came down to the planet. It was like a day out. Like you go a day to the seaside, I came a day down to Earth, looking for this location in East Africa. And then a little later, I came to live on the planet. And when we went to South America, I was with Thoth, the one known as Thoth the Egyptian, Hermes Trismegistus, whatever. Right? He has multiple epithets, but he's actually the second son of the Enki, and he's also was at that time my grandfather. So we came to the planet, lived here, and when Marduk actually threw us out at in Egyptian history, when Ra, the sun god, took over from Thoth, the moon god, Ra, who was Marduk, threw Thoth, the moon god, out. We were thrown out, and we went to South America. And in South America, about 4,000 years ago, at a time when the rest of the Anunnaki were preparing to leave the planet, I was killed in a specific way that required that I stay on planet Earth. And so I have reincarnated on Earth as an Earth human for the last roughly 4,500 years.
That's a difficult story to talk about, because most of us have been raised not to think in terms of incarnation, that we can come and incarnate in different bodies in different centuries, that we have a soul that never dies, that continues to live throughout, and all of that. I mean, I understand a little bit about, having read some of the works that Zachariah Sitchin's and listening to you recently. But how do you get people to believe that when they were taught differently in our churches? When we say heaven and hell, and when you finish this life, you go to heaven or you go to hell, but no one tells you that you have the ability to come back again. How can you get people?
Well, here's the thing. I would wish that everybody would believe nothing, that they would simply seek out knowledge, or they would be asking questions about these issues, because it really doesn't matter whether you believe in reincarnation or not. When you die, you find out the truth of it, right? So if you believe it in this life, it doesn't matter that much, right? You will find out when you die that, yes, you're going to have a chance of another go around, and that this goes on essentially indefinitely, you know. So the problem, I think, with many of the issues that we have today is the fact that people have been conditioned to believe things and to actually stake their eternal soul's life on that belief, and especially, you know, religious belief. So it's good to have faith, but faith is not the same as belief. Faith is trust. Trust that there is a creator who knows what he or she is doing. Trust that there are future possibilities. Trust that we will be taken care of. And just have faith in that. But that doesn't require you to believe a whole big rigmarole of things to do or not to do, you know, like eating fish on Friday and fasting from 6 till 7 in the evening. Whatever it is, whatever your religion tells you to do, those are just rules made up by men. And very often they were made up by ignorant men who could neither read nor write when they decided what the rules would be. So if somebody, whatever their belief, whatever their faith, at this point in time, if they could just pause for a moment and say to themselves, okay, I'm not going to throw out my religion or my belief structure. I'm going to hold on to this background until I have more knowledge, but I am going to start questioning what it is that I believe and why I believe it. And then we start opening the door for new insights, new enlightenment, new ideas to come in and lead us more towards the truth.
Okay.
Whatever that truth is.
Right. So it's tough to change constructs, if you will. The saying that here I am, fear of death, if you will, that's taught in the Bible. Fear of death, the right to murder. You can go to war and kill people for the sake, and we tell you to protect the country. And the other part of it is sexual suppression. Some people say those three foundation points represents the Bible, if you will. So coming out of that, as you look at being an Anunnaki, as you look at being somebody who has come and gone many, many times in existence, how can you change that construct with people?
By seeking out information and knowledge. For example, who put the word Bible, as you know, means a collection of stories. That's what the word Bible means.
Right.
A collection of stories. So the first question to ask yourself is, who put the Bible stories together? Who chose what those stories would be? And who are the characters in the Bible? You know, Yahweh, Jehovah, this is the same person. You know, it's the Yod He Vav He of the Jewish alphabet. And sometimes it's pronounced Yahweh, sometimes it's pronounced Yeshua, sometimes it's pronounced Jehovah. And they eventually settled on the word Jehovah. The Jewish history settled on the word Jehovah to represent God. But actually, Jehovah is Enlil. He's an Anunnaki, and he's one who doesn't like humans, particularly. He's the one who decided to let them drown when the Great Flood came. So and this is well documented. This is not some airy-fairy clairvoyant feeding you a load of rubbish. This is well written down in our history on the clay tablets from the Library of Nineveh. You can research it at the University of Pennsylvania, at the British Museum, at the Great University in Bonn in Germany. Many, many universities have collections of these clay tablets that were written, and many of them were written before the Great Flood. These are real, true recordings of what happened and when it happened. And they tell the story. It's like the book of Genesis, for example, where it says, in the beginning, you know, there was the void and the darkness and so on. And it takes about, 2 pages in your average Bible, a couple of chapters. And if you want the whole story of Genesis, then you need to read the Sumerian version, which was called the Enumeri Elish, and takes 2 whole volumes just to write the creation story. And if you want the source of that, you then go back to the clay tablets of Nineveh, where the Anunnaki wrote the story themselves. So you have to just be willing to ask questions.
All right, here's a big question. How come when I came through school, grade school, college, been to 5 different colleges, taught at several others, how come I didn't know any of this information? And most people, I would say 98% of the people walking around the faces of the earth have never heard your story. Would you believe that? Or the story that Zachariah Sitchin talks about?
Yes, I would believe that.
Why?
And
Why is
there's
that?
a reason for
Why?
it.
Why not?
Every single government in the world arranges its educational policies to train its people to serve the state. That's what countries do. That's what governments do. That's why they tell the farmers what crops they should grow. They tell, the kids which schools they should go to. They train them. They decide in their educational system what they have most need of. And then they condition the education to produce those people. Essentially, every person is just a working unit.
Okay.
What do they call them now?
I don't know.
I've forgotten what they call them now.
Let's call them worker bees. But listen, who put the Bible together? Who did that? Who made the decision? Was it at the Council of Nicaea?
Well, of course you have. No. The Bible, the New Testament, yes. The original Bible are I think there are 5 books of the Jewish Torah. And those are the foundation of the Bible. And then you've got many added books, which are essentially Jewish history, the history of the Jewish people. And the reason they were called the chosen of God was because they were the first group of people who were genetically altered to serve the Anunnaki's needs. They were the first group developed for that purpose, right? And so they were called the chosen people, God's chosen people, right? And then you have later on, of course, our Lord Jesus Christ, who is the master of this quadrant of the universe, and is a son of the Enki, and rulership is his right. He is, in the sense that, you know, there is an ancient kingly bloodline, and he's the heir of it, right? So we do right to set him up as high as we do. But after he came to the planet, they tried to kill him and get rid of him, of course, and were not behaving well. A man called Saul of Tarsus suddenly got enlightenment, as we know in the story on the road to Damascus. He received a flash of enlightenment and realized that the story that Christ had been telling was correct, and that his teaching was what was needed. So then St. Paul, took that teaching and changed it. He changed it to make it palatable to the Western world, primarily to the Greeks, and then, of course, to the Gauls and the Celts and so on. So you might say, we don't actually have a Christian religion on the planet. We have a Pauline religion based on the teachings of Christ, right? And then when they came to the councils, the Roman Church developed, it established itself, and after about 300 years, it had several councils, the Council of Constantine, the Council of Nicaea, and so on. And these councils were attended by all the new bishops from all the countries where they had spread the so-called Christian religion. Now, 95% of those bishops at that time could neither read nor write. So probably a couple of dozen who could read and write, they were the ones who controlled the voting and who decided what would become the gospel of the New Testament. And they chose the 4 books that went in, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and they determined what was in those books. They edited it. Let's put it that way. The word gospel just means, we would say a letter. Somebody writes something down, just a page or two, you know? And that is what a gospel is. And it was written 8 years after the event, 100, 200 years after the event.
Okay. So, all right, well then, when we say history, it's his story, not necessarily my story or your story,
Right.
but it's history. So the people in charge, he say, he who has the gold, he determines what the rules are, right? The golden rule.
Yes.
He who has the gold, who's in charge, who's the money, he'll tell you what to think and and how to think and what to do with your life. Is that right? Bottom line.
Yes.
Okay.
That really is true.
All right. So what would you suggest people do? Now, you have written 3 books, ETA, Return of the Anunnaki, and I think Violent Flame, if you will, and all can be found on the website nohoax, HOAX.net. So your books are there. And by the way, we didn't talk about the fact that you were married to George Green, who put up that website some years ago, who was a research analyst, if you will. He traveled all over the world for 60, 70, 80 years with the Palladians, with the Nordics, with the Dracos, whatever. He was, and also with what are some of the other things he did in a nutshell, in another minute or so?
Oh, he was in construction. He built all over the country, major construction work. And when he found out about the extraterrestrials and the UFOs, and that people were trying to tell stories about it but couldn't get anybody to publish their material, then he decided to start a publishing company, and he gave up the construction and focused on publishing basically whistleblower material for 20 years. the last 20 years of his life, and going around, or 30 years even, and going around the country talking about it, trying to waken people up. He was very knowledgeable with economics and had at one point been involved in the government briefly when they offered him a job, and he found out exactly what they were up to and said, no, thank you, I don't want to play that game. And he turned them down and started telling people what was actually going on, what the government was planning, what the government was doing, how they intended to decrease population, and how they'd actually written it down at the time of President Carter's presidency. It was written in stone, called the Georgia Guidestones. And I believe they just took those down about 6 months ago, but they've been standing there in Georgia telling you since the time of President Carter exactly what the government is going to do. It's going to depopulate the country. It's going to depopulate the world. And of course, we're all experiencing that now with the COVID. But that's another whole story, Russell.
Okay, and we will get to some of that story. I just wanted to cover that history because what you were saying, for many people, it's absolutely unbelievable that you came here some 400,000 years ago. You were on the spaceship with the Anunnaki, and they came here to get the gold to fix up their planet, not to use that as a medium of exchange, but to fix up their planet. And it's all in the book by Zachariah Sitchin, and that's called The 12th Planet. Any other, right. I'm going to take another minute. In the next minute, any other reference material that you want people to go to validate their belief system? Because it's a changing constructs based on what we've been taught in the Bible, so to speak. And lastly, I was just checking on the number of Bibles being sold.
Yes.
About 100 million are being printed each year. 20 million to be sold each year in the United States. But any other books, any other references?
Yeah. You know what? I would like to say to people, sit down and actually read the Bible and read it as a history, knowing that whoever was in charge was writing the history. That's the way you should read every book, right? So read the Bible in that way. Read the other books that are the great books of the world. The Quran, for instance. There's a very good English translation of the Quran by a Professor Arbery. It's amazing what it tells you about our Lord Jesus Christ. So read these books, but also at the same time, try and read somebody like Dr. Michael Salla and his Histories of Antarctica, which gives you a modern day, accurate, well-documented, plenty of photocopies of government documents, actually what's going on in this present time in our history with extraterrestrials on the planet. So don't just read the spiritual books or the esoteric books, read the factual history books that are well documented, like Dr. Michael Salla.
Okay. Well, we will be talking about those. And yeah, Dr. Michael Salla, he's a prolific writer and a consummate researcher.
Brilliant.
Yeah, he's absolutely brilliant. So
Yes.
any specific book that you've read lately in the next 30 seconds that you would recommend by Dr. Michael Salla to reference all of this material that we've been talking about?
Yes, the history of Antarctica. It's called the History of Antarctica, and it's an amazing book. It's a trilogy. There are two other books that go with it, but if you read that one, you will want to read the other two, I'm sure. It's absolutely amazing, and it gives you so much accurate, well-validated material. But you can't help but say, yes, this is true. This is maybe what Gillian is telling us might not be true, right? But this that Dr. Salla is telling us is definitely true because there's the documentary evidence to go with it.
Okay. Listen, I got to
when something's 400,000 years old, there's not much documentary evidence.
Right,
except the clay tablets, of course.
Right. Okay, not a problem. Hold on a minute. I'm going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to lightsinthenight.org, and we have Gillian Green, who's been on the planet. She's an Anunnaki, if you will, and she's been on the planet for many, many, many hundreds of thousands of years, and she's giving us some information so that we can change our construct of who we are and to know a little bit more of exactly what's going on planet Earth. I'll be back in just a moment, right here on lightsinthenight.org.
Whether you drive for extra income or a full-time job, you want to protect yourself. And since many rideshare and delivery drivers use their personal vehicles, easy, affordable access to legal assistance is a must. As an addition to the Legal Shield legal plan, drivers can now access our rideshare and delivery supplement. This supplement helps protect and empower you on the job by providing essential legal services, such as a dedicated provider law firm for phone consultation and legal research, access to a provider attorney who will review documents, make calls, and write letters to help solve legal issues, personal legal help if the IRS audits your rideshare income, advice and defense for rideshare and delivery moving traffic violations. Additional legal services are provided at a 25% discount. Legal Shield is committed to helping members live protected, empowered lives. We pride ourselves on providing fast, affordable services to give rideshare and delivery drivers the peace of mind needed to navigate bumps in the road while helping your business stay on course.
Are you worrying about a legal problem like a consumer issue, medical bill, real estate transaction, landlord-renter dispute, traffic ticket, or estate planning? Legal issues are a part of life, but that doesn't make handling them any less confusing, frustrating, devastating, or even crushing. And lawyers are expensive. There's a better way. Legal Shield gives you advice and counsel from reputable lawyers near you. Our caring and dedicated law firms can help you with a wide range of legal matters, all for less than $1 a day. Protecting and empowering you with a law firm in the palm of your hand. The Legal Shield mobile app can help you begin preparing your will. Take pictures of a traffic ticket and securely submit it directly to your law firm and speak to a lawyer with just the press of a button. Or call 24/7, 365 in an emergency. Legal Shield protects over 1.8 million households in all 50 states, plus Canada, liberating our clients from legal frustration. Knowing you have a law firm in your corner protecting you can be empowering. Worry less and live more. Sign up for Legal Shield.
Welcome back to Lights in the Night with your host, Russ Johnson. Make sure to call in at 888-994-4995 Studio A to get your questions out there. Visit us online at lightsinthenight.org. Now, keep your eyes on the skies and your ears turned to your radio as we come back to Lights in the Night.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Listen, folks, we are lightsinthenight.org. My name is Russell. And last week, we talked with Gillian Green. She was on the program. She talked about the Anunnaki and that she was part of the people who came to this planet some 400,000 years ago or more to get the goal not to exchange for goods and services, but because Nibiru, the planet that the Anunnaki happened to occupy, had some difficulty with its atmosphere, and they needed the gold to patch it up, so to speak, somehow. And so we want to continue that conversation, but yet we want to upgrade it because I want to get into what the Pentagon has said about alien craft possibly are here, that aliens are possibly on the planet with us and been here. As a matter of fact, been here before we were conceived, according to what Gillian is saying, because we were engineered by the Anunnaki a few years ago, if you will. So we're back with Gillian. Gillian, Russ Johnson here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great.
Yes.
So we covered a lot of material in that first broadcast. As a matter of fact, Sally was in this. I'm in the studio. Sally's in the studio. Sally.
Hi, Gillian. I just happened to walk in.
Yeah.
I have to say hello to you.
and she's from
Hello.
England too.
Yeah.
But she said she believes that she was on that same craft
Well, I never knew your story, Gillian. I met Russ maybe about 3 months ago now, right?
Right.
And exactly what you had said, and I did not know that you were going to say any of this. Is it on? Okay. Hold. I'm sorry. It just showing up at the studio. I think is the microphone on?
Okay, we on.
It
Yeah,
is,
we're
okay.
on. We,
I
we,
actually had said to Russ that I also believed that I was on the first, so to speak, rocket ship that actually came to Earth. I was drawing from that, and I had drawn rocket ships, and I could see it very clearly from never having had an art lesson. I'm actually relaying this and putting it onto paper. So to me, it's just, I'm trying to make sense of this. It's just amazing.
so, but you saying too, then that Sally is saying too, like you, Jillian, that she has been here a number of times, incarnated dozens and dozens of times on this planet. So, you might have met Jillian at some point.
Well, to me, I don't believe anything is coincidental.
Right,
And
right.
not knowing Gillian's story and just telling you actually what had happened to me it was just amazing. That here I'm sitting, I happen to come into the studio, you're on the air with Russ, and you're relaying a story that I had told him 3 months ago, not knowing anything about you, Gillian.
Jillian, are you still there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Listen,
I'm here.
Good. I appreciate you. Listen, let me follow up. We only have another 20 minutes or so, but and I appreciate you being here this morning. But listen, aliens have been here for many, many years. Help us for those of us who are hearing this for the first time, help us to understand how that can be, that the Anunnaki happened to come here and get the gold, that the reptilians even were, I believe, here at that time, that there are many species here around, especially under the caves of the earth in Antarctica. Could you talk about some of that history so that we can start expanding our consciousness, if you will, think a little differently?
Are you asking me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
We need help.
Well, the Anunnaki, of course, did the genetic engineering that created Homo sapiens sapiens, and that was completed. The Homo sapiens result was first finished about 40,000 years ago. Now, after the Anunnaki returned to this planet, and I say return because it was not the first time they were here, right? They knew all about the gold eons ago. But there was the asteroid belt, which prevented ships coming back down to Earth. And until a way was found through, they were not able to visit the surface. So they had found a way through. They were back on the Earth. They were mining the gold. They got to the point where they didn't want to do that anymore. They developed Homo sapiens sapiens, right? And then other extraterrestrials from other planetary systems started arriving on the planet, started trying to get to Earth. And that's a long, long time ago. I mean, 500,000 years ago or more. That's when the Anunnaki started fighting with the reptilians from Draco. The Draconian reptilians are not the same as the reptilian species that live under the Earth on this planet and have been here since the time of the dinosaurs. And I don't really know much about them, right? But I do know about the Dracos from the Draconian reptilians. And the Anunnaki have been fighting them in space for millennia, right? But they eventually started getting down onto the planet, as did other alien species. And the other alien species started, like the Pleiadians, the Drays, the Reticulans, various groups of extraterrestrials started abducting and experimenting with the now developed humans. So we not only have the actual genetic engineering done by the Anunnaki that has made us the way we are, principally. But in groups all over the planet, there are different people who have other parts of DNA from other aliens in their systems. With the Anunnaki, it was a global spread of the genetic engineering. With the other extraterrestrials, it was more in the area that they were working with. So there might have been an area on each continent where groups of people were affected by their interference genetically. But the basic engineering was done, that created us the way we are, was done by the Anunnaki. And so we have a generations long blood connection to the Anunnaki. And we look like them. We are like them. We look like them in many, many ways, except, of course, that they are much darker skinned. The Anunnaki are not a white race. They're a light brown race, I would say. More like the color Polynesian coloring. And so we are the same as the Anunnaki, genetically.
All right.
We're like them.
Okay. So.
And the stories of the Bible are about them. The Old Testament stories are all about the Anunnaki, the gods who walked in the garden. They are the Anunnaki.
Okay. Let me go to the Bible for just a moment. I'm looking at aliens, or looking at human beings with favor, the gods, let's call them the gods, and they're looking at the human beings and they're saying, oh, wow, that's attractive to us. So they began to cohabitate with them, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Uh-huh.
And so now we have the hybrids, the mixture of the Anunnaki and the other species that they created here on Earth. Let's call them hybrids, right? So now we're all running around. We're part of the Anunnaki, and we're part of the creation that they made. How is that continuing? I mean, is that a continuation of the process of, as indicated?
Well, okay. In the Anunnaki, there are two major factions. Like you might say, you have Democrats and Republicans here, right? With the Anunnaki, you have two major factions that are the descendants of the mighty Lord Anu. His one son was the Enlil, the commander of the air, and the other was the Enki, the commander of the earth, right? And these two are opposites in their view of humanity. Enlil, who ended up as Jehovah, the biblical Jehovah, right, is the one who doesn't like humans. And yet he is the one who has been raised up as God, right? He's not God, but he's been raised up as God in the Bible, right? The one who liked humans was the Enki, and his son Marduk was so fond of humans that he married a human woman, has a human family, and when all the rest left the planet, he stayed behind with his group of friends. He wouldn't leave because he wouldn't leave his family, right? And many of the Ajiji had human families and would not leave the planet. And in fact, they made themselves a new base under Lake Titicaca in Peru.
So somebody had
and we all know how.
Somebody had said that there are many bases all across the.
Oh, they do.
Broad spectrum.
They do have many bases, but the first one that they built, when the rest left, because we were down in South America at the time, the first one they built was an underwater city, underground city, under Lake Titicaca in Peru. That was the first home base for Marduk and his followers with human families who stayed on the planet when the rest of the Anunnaki left.
Okay,
and that was about 4,500 years ago.
Okay, hold
roughly.
So we're saying that the Anunnaki along with other species, are occupying homes on this planet, on in caves,
Right.
up until the day.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so look, wait a minute, because you hear the people saying the world is flat. Some people say, I don't believe it's flat, it's oblong. I don't believe it's oblong, I believe it's round. So we're saying that people are living in caves, in cities, all underground, including Dr. Suller. He talked about the Antarctica, that the Germans have taken over
Yes,
Antarctica
Antarctica.
with another
That's
species.
right. Yes.
Well, let's talk about that
Yeah,
a bit,
that's
because
true.
that's even hard to believe, that there are cities
Well,
and spaceships
there
under
are
the
many,
water.
many cities
Under-
under Antarctica.
All right, let's talk about that for us, please.
Well, Antarctica was not always covered with ice and snow. I mean, it looked very much like Montana. Great big sweeping plains, mountains, all of the huge mountain range. And to my recollection, there were 5 major cities, Anunnaki cities, in Antarctica. And it was a sudden catastrophic event that basically wiped it all out and covered it with ice. But after World War II, and of course left many cavernous openings under the earth, underground, right? And so after World War II, or not after, towards the end of World War II, Germany continued the war for about 2 years, and during that last 2 years transferred its major industrial base to Antarctica. And this is what Dr. Sala is writing about. And the reason they were able to do this is because that's where the reptilians, the draconian reptilians, established themselves thousands of years ago. I don't know, maybe 10,000 years ago. And so they disclosed to the Germans the way to get in to the underground areas of Antarctica. And they work hand in glove with the German Fourth Reich, developing rocketry, spacecraft, all kinds. Most of the spacecraft you see flying around in the sky are actually coming from underground bases on Earth. They are not spaceships as such, right? They can't go outside the solar system. They can't go into deep space. They're just local, like local bus services. So that's the reptilians and the Germans, and also the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians were the ones who gave Hitler the information to build his rockets for World War II through the Vril Society in Germany. They were a secret cult society in Germany. I think they were called the Thule Group and the Vril Society. And it was through them that the Germans got all their information to build the rockets that eventually allowed them to build their spacecraft, which they do build now under Antarctica. And they do it with the Pleiadians and the reptilians. And they are very bad news for the planet.
Okay.
They are the ones who are in partnership with our government, our armed forces out of the Pentagon, are in contractual agreement with the reptilians and the Germans, and control our military-industrial complex.
Wow. So when I listen to Gaia and watch Cosmic Connection and Ancient Aliens, and Corey Good and David Wilcock and all I'm talking about, that the reptilians are among us, and as a matter of fact, in control of a lot of the governments of the world, by the way. And they said that they can shapeshift, that they can look like human beings, and they can look like a reptilian, and they can go back and forth. Do you have any information on that?
Yes, that's true. That's true. There are many human beings, appearing human beings walking around, who are actually totally taken over and inhabited by the pure reptilian energy. And this is not good news for humanity.
Okay.
But the good news, we talk about all the things that are not true, the lies that have been told us, and the things that are wrong with our planet and ourselves. But there are a lot of good things. I think we need to focus a little bit on the good things.
I
right?
will.
Christ came 2,000 years ago and told us exactly what we need to do to live right. This is, you need to live in this particular way of, harmony and friendship and basically the golden rule. And if you live in this way, you can claim immortality. You can have continuing consciousness. You can be in control of your life. You can decide what you will do for yourself. You can know the truth if you are seeking the truth. But how do we seek? We do it by asking questions. So I don't ask anybody ever to believe me. I don't want anybody to believe anything. I want them to question, to ask questions. And the things that we talk about, I hope, trigger questions in people's minds where they will go out and say, I want to know if this is true or not. I want to find out for myself what is true and what is false. Because the truth is out there. We just have to look for it.
Well, you talked about at one point, I was listening to you in another program. As a matter of fact, I was listening to Linda Newton Howell, I don't know, you probably, and Barbara Lamb this morning.
Yeah.
And they saying that they believe that up to 900 different alien species are out there visiting us on this planet, right? Why would they come here? Why?
Right.
Because this is...
Well,
some people call it the outback of the universe, the prison planet. Why would I?
It is.
Talk
well,
about
because we're right at the tail end of the Milky Way, so we have been easily ignored for a very long time. In fact, apart from a few species like the Pleiadians, the Anunnaki, and the Draconians that have had long time interest in this planet, most of the interest by extraterrestrials has come about since we split the atom. When we split the atom, that made us dangerous. And when we developed the hydrogen bomb, that made us dangerous to other species. This is a bit far out maybe for anybody to accept, but you and I have said this before, Russell. There's no such thing as nothing. Nothing can't be something. And any something is something. There has to be a reality to it. And the soul itself is not nothing. Scientific experiments tell us the soul weighs on average about 2.5 ounces, right? But what are those 2.5 ounces of soul energy? They are actually, when the soul is in your physical form, in your body, it's actually encased in hydrogen molecules. Soul energy is in the form of hydrogen molecules. So when Earth humans developed the hydrogen bomb, this became dangerous to all species who have soul energy, because the hydrogen bomb disrupts soul energy. And so this was when they started coming, doing flybys. Not many come down to the planet. I would say not more than maybe 20 species physically come to the planet. But the many other hundreds of species out there, right, they do flybys. They check on us. They look and see what we're doing. They keep an eye on us. And a long, long time ago, many of them got together and put an electronic network, if you like, to encase our planet. After we developed the hydrogen bomb, we've actually been encased in a pretty durable electrical field, so that we can't damage those beyond our own system.
Okay, listen, we got 5 minutes and we've covered so much. Jesus, we're saying that many American people believe that UFOs have visited Earth, have contacted world governments. Aliens are having children with human beings, which creates the hybrids running around now. Aliens are occupying the bodies of and in control of the planet. Some people are saying that. We're saying that that the planet has a chance. What's the big fight? Listen, since we only have about 4 minutes, what's the big fight about? Inky and all the people who are in the Galactic Command, they say that the big spaceships are above us, that on the moon they're watching us, and that's a laboratory. That's not a planet. That's a laboratory. That they observe us. So it's in and out of tons and tons of where would people go to get some of this information? We talked about Michael Seller. Your husband, George Green, he was here. And he
Right.
did research, what,
Yes.
70, 80 years?
You can hear what George was saying about the state of the nation, so to speak, on YouTube, because he never put stuff up, but several people put some of his information and some videos of his UFO things are out there on YouTube. That you can still find them if you look for George Green. He's been departed this planet for 4 years now, but he's still working like crazy. But you can find his old material up there. You can find Dr. Michael Seller is great. You can read people like, the ones you were talking about, Corey Good and Wilcock, and an interesting one to read would be about Colonel Byrd, the Air Force colonel who flew over
Yes,
the Arctic
Admiral
and went
Byrd.
to the center of the Earth. Admiral Byrd, yes. And because of his trip down to Antarctica, and then they were defeated, right, and had to hurry home. So just look at the material that's out there and choose what appeals to you, what you like to read. Don't make yourself read things you don't enjoy reading. But there's plenty out there. You can even read some science fiction and get some good information out of them. So
Okay.
there's plenty of material.
And finally, you said there's a possibility that this war between good and bad, as in Ephesians 6:12, is continuing. And so it's about principalities. And you're saying the good thing about all of this is that there's some choices we can make to save the planet, save ourselves, and save our souls. I believe there's a book that you recommend. What's that book you recommend about Jesus, saving Jesus?
Saving Jesus. Saving Jesus is probably the most useful book I've read in the last 20 years. There are so many books out there telling us what we should do. And Christ himself said 3 times that I recall in the New Testament, everything that he could do, you can do, and more. Now, if you want to believe something, believe that. That is something that you should believe. Believe it, because when Christ spoke, he was telling you the truth. Everything he did, you can do and more, because you have a mind of your own and you have free will.
Okay.
So
right.
take charge of your own mind, educate it, and then exercise your free will.
Okay, that statement that you just mentioned, it's in John 14:12. All the things that I have done, and you can do and more. Listen, Gillian, it's been an honor, a privilege, and a pleasure to have you on the program. You've given us a lot of information.
Well, thank you for having me, Russell. It's been a pleasant morning and enjoyment. So thank you.
So anybody want to contact you? Is there any way they can contact you and maybe get some additional information?
Not right now. Right now, Russell, because I'm in process of moving. So
Okay.
I'm afraid they can't get hold of me right now.
Okay, but they can go to the website that George left, which is nohoax, HOAX.net, and look at the 3 books that you have written and other materials that he has put up on that website. So again, thank you 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times for being on the program and sharing with us a lot of the constructs and concepts that are difficult to believe for most of us who've been trained differently. But you say it's the golden rule: he who has the gold makes the rules, right?
Yes, but the real golden rule is do unto others as you would be done by.
Okay,
And
gotcha.
if you live by that golden rule, you're going to be all right.
Well, great. Thank you for being with us. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Russell.
Ladies
Bye-bye
and
now.
Bye
Thank
now.
you.
Well, you've been listening to lightsinthenight.org, a disclosure program that we attempt to answer the questions that the government officials don't want you to know, that no one else wants you to know, the priest, the pope, the president. So we're attempting to, on this program, to bring to you issues like Area 51, Grooms Lake, crop circles, abductions, alien visitations, on and on and on, and bring to people like Gillian Green, Laura Eisenhower, Andrew Basago, Linda Mutant Howell, Corey Good, and all the other great people who are doing the research. And Sally, thank you very much for being in the audience today. Sally, your program is when and where?
My program is Mondays 2:30. Call me Zena. And it does have this as a topic. And it's a call-in program, but if anybody who's listening feels that they want to ask us a question, I believe you'll be here on Monday, Russ. We're happy to answer any questions if anyone's listening, because it does continue, not just call in about loved ones, it's about aliens and UFOs.
Okay. And that number to the studio is 888-994-4995. Thank you very much. Call me Zena.
Thank you.
That's the name of the
Thank
program.
you.
That's
yeah, call me Zena.
Okay. Hey, folks, thanks a lot for listening to lightsinthenight.org. Go to the website. There's a lot of information there. Have a good one. God bless you, and I'll see you next week. Same time, same place, same station.
You've been listening to Lights in the Night. Be sure to catch us every Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If you missed a show, be sure to head to our Facebook page, Lights in the Night with Russ Johnson. You can find us on all social media platforms and our website at lightsinthenight.org. We will see you next week, and as always, keep your eyes and ears peeled for Lights in the Night.